Today's episode about eyeballs is brought to you by the Nuance Dragon Ambient Experience, or DAX for short. This is AI-powered technology that helps physicians be more efficient and reduce clinical documentation burden that causes people to feel a bit overwhelmed and burnt out. To learn more about how DAX Copilot can help reduce burnout and restore the joy of practicing medicine, stick around after the episode or visit nuance.com/discover DAX. That's nuance.com/discover DAX.
Knock, knock, hi.
Knock, knock. Hi.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Knock Knock I with me, your host, Dr. Glaucom Flecken. Thank you for joining me this evening. We've got a wonderful episode for you today. Again, this is all things eyeballs here. That's all we're talking about. Occasionally, we touch on some other stuff, but it all comes back to the eye, which is an organ that studies have shown is the most important one. So I had a whole day I'm recording this again on a day that I operated this morning. And so I'm a little tired as usual. I'm always doing these in the evening. I've talked a lot about eyes today with lots of different people. Had a little clinic this afternoon as well. And now I'm talking with all of you and a little bit more relaxed here. I can tell some jokes. I tell jokes with patients too. That's a question I get asked a lot. What do you like with patients? Are you a comedian when you get there and you're talking about cataracts? And no, I'm not. Of course not. It's totally different. I am a different person. It is more of a professional setting. And so I am on my best behavior in clinic. But I think it's great to joke around with patients. I do it all the time. But it's different type of humor. It's not like my videos. I'm not like, acting like different people and stuff with my patients. It's like dad jokes, basically. That's what it is. And the thing is, and maybe I've talked about this before, but most of these episodes, you guys, they're stream of consciousness. So it just kind of like whatever comes to my brain. You got to be careful with the type of humor you use in like a 10-minute interaction you have with a patient, or 5 minutes, sometimes even like 2 minutes. You don't get much time to sit there and just kind of make chit chat. And so the humor that you use with a patient, it's got to be safe. It's got to be kind of ha-ha, jokey, dad jokes, very, very bland, because I don't know what this person, who this is. Maybe they're a new patient. The people that I've known for a while, that I've seen for years, yeah, I can joke about anything with them. We know each other very well. But if it's like a new patient, you don't know them very well. You don't know what their values are. You don't know what their upbringing is like. You don't know where they are politically, or so you got to just keep it very basic, very basic. And so, but now with these episodes here, I can just let loose a little bit, because if you're watching this or listening to it, I assume you like me. Or maybe you're just getting to know me and you're like, what is this? Who is he talking to? I'm in a room by myself. My dog's here. But other than that, it's just you and me, you guys, listener. So anyway, thanks for being here. And it's been a day. Not the best day, but this is a great way to end it. I got to come home and I was a little stressed after work. Got to play with my kids a little bit, talk to Kristen. We strategized about our business we run together, Glaucom Flecken, and now I'm talking to all of you. So before we get to our topic, actually, what I want to the thing I want to discuss real quick leads into our topic for today. Brace yourself, everyone. All right, a few weeks ago, there was a big thing that happened on social media where the politician RFK Jr., Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's, I don't really know his background. I know he ran for president before. I think he's running for president again. He's a Kennedy person. So I don't really know like what he's done in his career. I don't follow politics very much. Like, I generally know what's happening in the world, but like I'm not a big like politics junkie. That's not me. That stuff just drives me crazy. So, but this was a story that it's hard not to come across. So it turns out RFK Jr. Told somebody in an interview or something that he at one point there was a dead worm found in his brain. How it got there, nobody knows. What it did to him, nobody really knows. The background is that he had at one point in his life, he thinks it might have been from a trip in Asia that he took, but also he at some point in his life he was eating like an obscene amount of fish and actually ended up with mercury poisoning from eating a quote predatory fish, like buckets and buckets of predatory fish. I don't know. I don't know how much fish, but anyway, he said this thing. He said he had a dead worm that doctors found in his brain. Okay, like that raises a lot of questions, obviously. And I am not going to make fun of him for having a worm in his brain because depending on what your life experiences are, not unusual to like end up if you do a lot of traveling. All right, you have a lot of experiences in life. You might end up with a worm here or there, or some other kind of infestation, bed bugs. Who knows? A worm in your brain. There's all kinds of possibilities. So I'm not going to sit here and make fun of him because I am not in the business of making fun of people who have medical things happen to them. All right. You've seen my content. I don't make fun of patients. That's not what we do here. All right. And it is a very interesting situation and an interesting thing to say. So obviously people like flock to this, like, whoa, like this is someone who might be running for president. And I think it's also okay to laugh a little bit at this because he himself has made like jokes about it. And I'm going to read this tweet. He put this out. This is on May 8th when he said this. When this went viral in an article, and he was. It's not like this. He was outed by having he told people this. Like, I had a dead worm in my brain, which honestly, if somebody found a dead worm in my brain, I'd talk about it on social media too. That is interesting. So anyway, he said, this is from the Robert F. Kennedy Jr. X account. I offer to eat 5 more brain worms and still beat President Trump and President Biden in a debate. I feel confident of the result, even with a 6-worm handicap. That is objectively a very, very funny joke. I'm It's great. I love it. I love the sense of humor. I really do. I can appreciate that. I don't care like where you are politically. Like that's a great joke. And so I appreciate that someone can have a little self-deprecating humor. Always appreciate self-deprecating humor. Anyway, this got me thinking. This got a lot of people thinking about worms. And so guess what we're going to do today? You got it. It is time. I cannot put this off any longer, you guys. It is time to have the episode about eye worms. I know you've been waiting for it. Some of you are they're chomping at the bit. You can't wait. Like, finally, he's going to talk about all the eye worms and the protozoans and the infestations. And we're going to go some places that some of you might not like. And the good news, the silver lining here, this might be good news for some of you, maybe bad news for others, is that this is a podcast. This is audio. Even those of you watching on YouTube, I don't have eye worms to show you. All of these you can Google image search and you will see everything you want to see about all of these things I'm going to talk about in this episode. So I want this is your warning, all right, that we are talking about eye worms, worms in the eye, and by the brain the eyes are an extension of the brain. You can think of them as brain bubbles. Some people refer to them as such. We are talking about worms that get into this structure. So if that is not for you, feel free to turn this off now. Like, I won't judge you. I get it. We all have a thing. All right. We all have a thing. My thing is teeth. I can't do teeth. Teeth gross me out. Mouth things, removing teeth cavities, the drill, going to the dentist, getting my teeth cleaned. I do it. I do it because I like having teeth, but it grosses me out. I hate it with every fiber of my being. Some of you have that same thing for eyeballs. I understand that. All right. So this is your out if you need to leave. But it's going to be interesting. I'm going to teach you some things. It'll be kind of fascinating here. All right. So that's it. Let's take a quick break and then we'll jump right into it. All right. Here we go. Eye worms. You ready? So what we're going to do, I have, I think 5 different eye worms, and I'm using the term worm very loosely. These are sometimes they're not really worms, but they're like creepy crawlies. Maybe I should say these are eye creepy crawlies we're talking about today. And I've ordered them from least problematic to most problematic, or least in my opinion, least disgusting and awful to have, uh, all the way down to most awful. Okay, that's the order of things. All right, so we're gonna start with a very common one, Demodex. That's right, Demodex mites. So there are I just hate to break this to you all, but there are studies that show that in the world, anywhere from 40 to 80% of us have with blepharitis, this disease where you get dry eye and irritation. 40 to 80% of us with blepharitis have Demodex. And I will tell you this, by like middle age, roughly 100% of us have Demodex. So this Demodex is a mite. It's a mite, but it's been generally recognized as a commensal organism. This is something that just lives with us. It's a little buddy. It's something that we all get at some point. Just like we have bacteria all over ourselves, we are covered in bacteria. Well, guess what? We got some mites on us. All right. They're so tiny. They're very tiny. And most of the time, they don't cause any problems. All right. They're just a friendly bystander of normal skin. That's what Demodex are. Okay. Almost everybody has these guys. The problem is when you have too many and they start getting kind of overactive. They start, burrowing in and overpopulating your skin. That's when they lead to this disease that I just referred to called blepharitis. I talked about blepharitis in a previous episode. It's just inflammation of the eyelids, because what these mites do is they burrow into our hair follicles, kind of right where the hair comes out of the skin, specifically the eyelashes. They kind of they like to eat. They feast on dead skin cells and your normal like sebaceous secretions. And then at night, what they do is they crawl out. This is really gross just hearing myself talk about it. And that's when they have their activity. They mate, they lay eggs. They lay eggs. And their lifespan is typically about 2 to 3 weeks. All right. This is what happens. All right. And then whenever you get too much of them or too much activity, or maybe you are specifically a little bit more sensitive to them, your body will start to react to it. You'll start to develop inflammation. Your own immune system reacts to all this Demodex activity. And then you get red, itchy, irritated, flaky eyelashes. All right. So if that you're having that kind of problem, then yeah, you should probably go see a doctor. We have some pretty decent treatments for Demodex blepharitis, and it's something that's fairly easy to diagnose. There's some classic telltale signs. You get these things called collarettes at the base of your eyelashes, and sometimes you need a microscope to see them. But at the base of the eyelashes, you get this little, it's like a sleeve of sebaceous, just like it looks like a sleeve of this like crusty golden colored stuff. All right, that's just sits there. It ensheaths your hair follicle on your eyelash. Oh man, we're just getting started, you guys. Okay. Anyway, that's the telltale sign of it. And there's some medications that can treat this. All right. That's the bottom line. That's why it's at the bottom of the list, because we all have Demodex mites. And if they start acting up, causing problems, we can treat it. All right. There you have it. That's Demodex. Number one. How we doing? Everyone okay? All right. Very good. All right, let's move on to Duzin. All right, so number two. This is, if I had to choose, and by the way, I have 6 of them actually. If I had to choose between having one of these 6, this would be the second one I'd like. Demodex would be preferable, but then if not, oh God, if I have to have one, let's go with Duzin. All right, this stands for diffuse unilateral subacute neuroretinitis. We got too many hard words to say in ophthalmology, you guys, but diffuse unilateral subacute neuroretinitis. It's an inflammatory disease that affects the retina, the back part of the eye. All right, and it's caused by, you guessed it, a nematode. A nematode. That's right. Now there's lots of different nematodes. All right, the ones that are classically cause Duzin is Toxocara canis, which I think is basically a parasite that you find in dogs. There's other ones that are parasites of raccoons and skunks and of the dog hookworms, and so they can be found all over the place. But basically, these are the eggs from the nematode get ingested um, um, after they've been carried by dogs or raccoons. All right. So they get into your bloodstream and then eventually they get into the retina. And so the way we see this is a lot of times patients will come in. And I say a lot of times, guys, beyond Demodex, now the ones I'm going to talk to you about, these are rare. Like we do not see these often, especially if you're in like a developed country. You haven't been doing a lot of backpacking in rural environments around the world and eating questionable things and drinking from questionable water sources. uh, an infectious disease specialist dream scenario is to hear you talk about those things. If you haven't been doing all those dangerous things, you've just been living your life, you're not going to get any of these. All right. So just maybe that can be reassuring to you all. So anyway, so you get these protozoan, these nematodes. I keep saying protozoan. It's nematodes. I don't know the difference. They're creepy crawlies. That's what they are. So anyway, a patient will come in and what they'll have blurry vision, and often it's just in one eye. And then you look at the retina and you see these track marks through the retina. Sometimes you have to have special imaging to be able to detect it, but you see this basically this area of atrophy that goes in a track. And I feel like I'm getting deja vu, like I've talked about this before. I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself here, but we could all use an extra lesson about uh, infestations of the eye. So we see this, and maybe they have a history of like traveling, to any number of places, Venezuela, Brazil, Malaysia. Who cares? It could be the United Kingdom. Just rural areas, okay, and drinking questionable things, questionable water. And so we look back there, we see this track. It really does look like a worm has been traversing around the retina, eating photoreceptors. And that's basically what's happening. And then you got to keep looking. You look around until you find the worm. And you know what you do with it? You laser it. That's the best part. You get to treat this by shooting it with a laser. It's great. You don't remove it because that's in a very tricky place to remove the retina. No, you shoot it with a laser, and then you have to start usually anti-inflammatory medication, steroids, because a dead worm can incite quite an inflammatory reaction. So you treat it, you laser it. Usually you don't really often have to do. Um, uh, um, th- I think there's questionable results on how much use antihelminthic medications, which I'll be talking about a lot, albendazole as an example. So I don't think that's quite necessary if as long as you kill the worm, and that's it. So that's duzin. That's that's the one. Setting aside Demodex, that's the worm I would like to have if it gives you an idea where we're going. All right, so there you go. Number 3 on my list, going from would most like to have down to least like to have, we have, can't believe I'm even saying this in the context of, oh, I'd prefer to have this, ophthalmomyosis. Ophthalmomyosis, that's right. So I think I'm saying that right. It's spelled strangely, Myiasis, myosis. I've always said myosis whenever I refer to this. I've actually never seen this. I've learned about it. I've read about it. This is not something I have personally seen. It's an invasion of human or animal tissue by fly larvae. So ophthalmomyosis refers to the larval infestation of the eye. Okay, so an example, so it would be like the bot fly. That's the classic cause of ophthalmomyosis. So the sheep bot fly, in particular, it's the most common cause of human ophthalmomyosis. Other species have been found, but that's the biggest thing. So the female botfly will retain her eggs within her body until they hatch, and then typically deposits the larva into the nostrils of sheep and goats. How we doing? Everyone doing okay? All right, I'm going to keep going here. Um, now, and then those larvae will then get into, I mean, obviously sheep, goats, but also it can get into humans. So the biggest risk factor here is someone who hangs around sheep and goats. So a lot of farmers, obviously, this is where these are the types of people that might get this disease. So the larvae get in. Now the thing is, whenever they're in humans, they don't live long enough typically to develop into their final stage and become flies. All right, so they remain the larval form until they die. So that's why it falls down on my list of worst things to have as far as worms go, because they're kind of self-limited. Like you get it'll like, you gotta get treated for it, but they'll die. The larvae do die. They don't. You won't have flies coming out of you. Okay, at least I don't think. Um, all right. So anyway, let's focus on the intraocular penetration of the larvae, because you can have the most common form of this disease is when the larvae just migrate. They get into the nasal passages, but also just on the surface of the eye. I'm so glad my wife's not listening. She doesn't listen to any of these because of stuff like this. But very rarely, sometimes they can actually penetrate into the eye and get inside the eye. Okay, so that is uncommon. And when they do get inside the eye, they can also cause that track-like appearance in the retina. All right, so the treatment for botfly induced ophthalmomyosis, which is the larvae of the botfly, is removal. You got to remove the larvae. So you'll see these at the slit lamp. You just sit there and you pick out. You take them out. You just take them out, and using anesthetic. And God bless the person that will sit there at the slit lamp when you tell them they have larvae in their eye and allow you to just sit there and remove them. I don't know what else you're going to do. I personally would be like, just put me to sleep. I'll take the risk of general anesthesia. Just put me out. I don't know if I could sit there. That takes a strong-willed person to be able to do that. Anyway, and then the reason I'm clumping Duzin and ophthalmomyosis together is because whenever they get inside the eye, ophthalmomyosis, you treat it the same way as Duzin. So you get to shoot it with lasers. All right. Again, it's uncommon that it gets inside the eye. Shoot it with a laser. Ophthalmomyosis, I think you do typically treat with albendazole or an antihelminthic medication to try to kill any other larvae that might be around. But yeah, immediate photocoagulation. You see them, you shoot them. One of the perks of being an ophthalmologist. And of course, every time you use a laser in ophthalmology, you got to say it. Pew, pew, pew. You have to do it. And patients recognize that that's a necessary thing. Otherwise, how do you know you're shooting a laser? You got to make the laser sound. All right. That's ophthalmomyces. How are we doing on time? Let me see here. All right. We're getting there. All right. We're halfway done. All right. Now, the rest, we're getting into even more rare things. Now, I'll be honest, you guys. Like, I don't. I haven't actually did some research on this because I don't see these enough. I don't read about them enough to be real familiar with a lot of these. I generally am aware of them, but we're just kind of exploring this together. A lot of the stuff. All right, the next one. All right, here we go. The one that you all have probably heard of before, Loa Loa. That's right, Loa Loa filariasis. Filariasis. This is it's a subcutaneous infection of the helminth Loa Loa, which is also known as the African eyeworm. Definitive diagnosis is made by direct visualization of the adult worm in subcutaneous or submucosal tissue. Now, this is how I have seen Loa Loa, is just through videos. Like, there are actually a couple really fascinating videos that you can see of this disease. It's not subtle, like as far as the other ones, you take some microscope to see. These you could see with the naked eye. You just look close enough, you can see the adult worm underneath the conjunctiva on the surface of the eye. And the way you treat it is you physically go in there and take it out. So you make a little incision in the conjunctiva, which is called a peritomy, something we do very commonly. And you just take it, and I've seen the videos of these. They can be 6-8 inches long. They can be quite impressive. All right. And so the Loa, as you know, I really shouldn't get into like the life cycle of these because I'm not a parasitologist. Thank goodness we have some of you out there working at the CDC. But I do know that it's the adults that you see and find in the subcutaneous tissue. You got to remove those. They can actually incite a lot of inflammation if you leave them in there. And I do believe actually that it takes quite a while to grow the worm. That's right. It might be 6 to 18 months from the time of inoculation until of the microfilaria until it becomes an adult worm. So you get the exposure to it. It's like maybe 18 months later, and all of a sudden you got something like roaming, wiggling around inside your eye. All right, so obviously you got to take it out, and you treat it systemically with medical therapy. You get probably albendazole and yeah, I'm reading it right now. Albendazole. Oh, ivermectin is also highly effective against Loa Loa. See, we're learning together, you guys. I have no. I can swallow my pride and recognize that I'm not an expert in some of these things. We're figuring it out together. We're getting grossed out together, you guys. I'm handling it okay. I hope you are too. And this actually brings up another point. Probably like once a year, I'll have a patient come in convinced they have a worm in their eye. They just absolutely convinced they have one. And in my mind, I'm always like, I kind of like brace myself whenever I I bring myself up to the slit lamp to look into the oculars, and I just like, what if there is a worm? Like, chances are I'm not going to see one, but what if there actually is one? Inevitably, the patient never has a worm again because you have to be in these certain situations, certain environments to be exposed to this type of thing. I think there's a lot of anxiety. Some people with extreme anxiety kind of assume the worst, right? So they feel like they have a foreign body sensation on their eye, which can be a million different things that are not worm related. But I think the anxiety, they think the worst case scenario, I have a worm. But fortunately, that's like never the case. So again, I just want you to feel better. Reiterate, this is maybe, ivermectin. There you go. For anyway, Loa Loa. Ivermectin. That's a case for ivermectin. How about that? There you go. That's when you can use ivermectin, if we still have any available. So anyway, that's Loa Loa. Let's keep going. We got 2 more. How about cysticercosis? You guys talk about cysticercosis? All right, maybe you've heard about cysticercosis. It's a fun one to say once you get it down. So that's almost as hard to say as Glockenflecken. It's a parasitic infection caused by the larval form. These larvae, they just get everywhere, don't they? My goodness. The larval form of a tapeworm called Taenia solium. It's a pork tapeworm. Yeah, pork tapeworm. And this is really interesting. So what it does is it can affect all different parts of the body, but when it affects the central nervous system, which is, if it affects the eye, it's technically the central nervous system. That's part of the central nervous system. And then it's called neurocysticercosis. So I don't know. I mean, that kind of denotes that it's in the brain. So maybe that's technically they're talking about that. But I don't know. If it's happening, we do that. We see that with syphilis. That's another example. So when syphilis is in the eye, it is technically neurosyphilis. Even if there's no manifestations anywhere else, all we see is in the eye. It is neurosyphilis, and we have to treat it as neurosyphilis. All right. So what'll happen is this tapeworm, the larvae from the tapeworm, will form a cyst. That's why it's called cysticercosis. And so the most common example in the eye is within the posterior excuse me, the posterior segment, the back of the eye. You will get this an enclosed cyst filled with the larva, the parasites, in the back of the eye. And it's sometimes they're just kind of floating there in the eye, usually attached to the retina. And then you have to take it out without opening the cyst, because again, that cyst is full of parasites, which is why this is very high up on my list, because that scares the living daylights out of me, to think that my surgeon, whoever it is, the poor person that has to remove a cyst full of parasites from my eye, they have to do it so gently, so carefully, as to not open up a cyst, open it up, and spill all the parasites into my body. It just stresses me out. I'm squirming a little bit. It stresses me out just thinking about it. So that's why it's like second to the highest on my list of things I would not want. I'm kind of starting to regret doing this episode. I'm sorry, you guys. Thank you to those of you who are still listening to me. I'm okay. So anyway, you also treat this with albendazole, and you also treat it with a little steroid to help control inflammation. But you gotta remove the cyst, right? Easier said than done. Where do you get this? Endemic. I don't know. I'm reading through an article right now. Oh, I see Latin America. Um, so southwestern United States, Arizona. Watch out, Arizonans. You call yourself Arizonians? I don't know what you call yourself. Don't get cysticercosis. Anyway, okay, let's move on, shall we? That's that's a bad one. But the one that is probably the most famous and is a huge cause of blindness around the world is onchocercosis. I screwed that up. Onchocercosis, which is river blindness. River blindness. So I'm going to take you through what happens with this. This is obviously happens around rivers. So fast flowing rivers, streams, in certain parts of the world, you see this really big cause of blindness, huge problem, kind of like malaria. The river blindness parasite has 2 different hosts. One is a flying insect, and the other one, human beings. So the insect is the small black fly. It breeds in rivers and streams, and the infected black fly will pass the disease on to humans through bites. And people can be treated for blindness with medications. We have treatment for it, which is great. But these are also happen in very remote areas of the world. And so the tricky thing is, just like most things, is just access to the treatment, right? So that's why this is such a big problem worldwide, um, uh, because just getting access to that. Also the life cycle of this, the fly, can be interrupted by spraying larvicide into rivers where the fly breeds. So that's another way to prevent this. There is hope for river blindness. So anyway, when the black fly bites an infected person, microscopic larvae are transferred to the fly. The larvae develop in the fly and are then passed on to the next person when the fly satisfies its need for a blood meal. So it's the human and the fly. We're just giving it back and forth to each other. The injected larvae will migrate into the victim's skin, and some of them will develop into mature worms. The male and female worms mate and deliver. This is what really knocks it up the list here. In your body, the male and female worms mate and deliver thousands of larvae every day, which inhabit the skin all over the body. There you have it. That's the grand champion of things worm-related things I would not want. Is I do not want adult worms. I'm all for like consensual adult sex, even with worms, just not in my body. Okay, not my body can participate in normal sex, but not I don't want it happening in me in worm form. That is where I draw the line. I probably draw the line like way before that, but that definitely crosses the line. All right, I do not want thousands of worm babies every day being made. That's too many babies. That's too many. Kill them all, burn them all with fire, get them out of my body. That is what I think. And so anyway, okay, so these worms, they're everywhere in your body, and then when they die, I'm just reading this to you because I don't know any of this stuff. When they die, the body's immune system causes severe and incessant itching. Like, just to know that itching in your body you're feeling is dead worm babies. Some of the microfilaria will invade their victim's eyes and die there. The body's immune system attacks and causes inflammation in the eye, which leads to irreversible blindness. River blindness, everyone. That is the mount of the summit, the peak of horrible eyeworm things, in my opinion. I don't know. I don't think we need to go into any more detail. All right, just get the worms out of my body. In your body. I don't want anybody to have those. All right. This might actually like just send me on the path to just eradication of river blindness. I'm sure that's why a lot of people do that. That's a big area of service around the world, is trying to get rid of river blindness. It really is. Onchocercosis. That's it. I'm not going to torture you guys anymore. We did it. We got through it. If I left out, there are other things I left out. I could have talked about toxoplasmosis is another one. I know there are some others, but anyway, I think that's enough. That's good. If I missed one that you really want to hear something about, maybe I'll do some surprise bonus infestations sometime later. But anyway, thank you all for listening. I'm your host, Will Flannery, also known as Dr. Glockenflecken. Thanks to my producers, Aaron Corney, Rob Goldman, and Shanti Brook. Our editor and engineer, Jason Portizo. Our music is by Omer Benzvi. Let me know. Give me some tips, things you want to hear about, topics you want me to discuss. This is probably the most disgusting one I've ever done, and I don't think I can top it. Maybe with bacterial conjunctivitis, but I don't know if I can fill a whole episode with that. Anyway, it's a one-off thing. Oh, I didn't do it. Don't do that eyeball tip of the week. Oh my gosh. How about, I don't, maybe like don't eat an excessive amount of how about this? Don't drink river water. think that's probably like that's a don't do it eyeball tip of the week. Let's do that. Don't drink river water anywhere. Like just filter it, right? I think you got like make sure you get a nice filter. Don't just drink raw river water unless you want thousands of worms having babies all over your body. That's it. That's your don't do it eyeball tip of the week. Thank you all for listening. All right, email me your thoughts. I'd love to hear it. knockknockhi@human-content.com. This is a Human Content production. Take care, everyone.
Knock, knock, goodbye.
Thanks for watching the episode. You can find more on that playlist over there. If you prefer to listen or you just had your eyes dilated, you can binge full episodes wherever you get your podcasts. Or join the party over on Patreon, where you get early access episodes, hang out with us, get lots of exclusive bonus content. Hope you subscribe, leave a comment below. Let us know what you think.